I'm really glad I broke up with a loser like you. Looks like I was right all along. Every word stabs me like a sharp thorn. The scorn in her voice cuts deep into my heart. For a moment, I'm taken aback, wondering if she was always this cruel. The woman I once loved is about to have her wedding at the venue where I work. I thought I had already lost everything, my past glory and my promise of a proposal. However, reality slaps me in the face once more. And then, on the day of her wedding, a disaster strikes. The pianist who was supposed to perform at the reception suddenly falls ill and can't play. I'll do it. The moment I say that, everyone in the waiting room turns to me in stunned silence. Wait, are you serious? This isn't some school recital, you know? A total amateur can't just step in. You're just a janitor, aren't you? Their skeptical gazes pierce through me. But I can't back down now. There's no problem. Let me do it. As I say those words, my hands still gripping a cleaning rag suddenly recall the familiar sensation of piano keys. No matter how long it's been, something inside me is waking up. I have a feeling. This performance will change everything. Our fate, and maybe even more. My name is Michael. I've been working part-time at this wedding venue for 6 months now. The job here involves a bit of everything. Some days, I arrange chairs in the banquet hall. Other days, I clean up after ceremonies or tidy up the waiting rooms. To be honest, the work is tough and mostly unglamorous. But seeing the newlyweds and their families leave with smiles on their faces fills me with a warmth I can't quite describe. Michael, can you take care of the cleanup in the reception hall? We have guests coming in for a tour today, so make sure it's spotless. Of course. I'll head over right now. Grabbing a mop, I make my way to the reception hall. A wedding venue is a place where happiness unfolds every single day. Being here, surrounded by so many joyful moments, sometimes makes me forget my own struggles. I've always liked sending off newlyweds with a smile and a heartfelt congratulations. As I enter the reception hall, my eyes are immediately drawn to the white grand piano. It sits there elegantly, its polished surface reflecting the soft glow of the room. Something stirs inside me as I gaze at its glossy white finish. But all I do is stand and stare from a distance. After mopping the floor, I move on to wiping down the reception desk. Just as my senior mentioned, a new couple is visiting today for a consultation. The planner is preparing materials, while the other staff members set up floral samples and drinks. I quietly go about my work, making sure everything is spotless without getting in anyone's way. I wonder what kind of guests we'll have today. With that thought in mind, I went about my work as usual. Just before noon, I heard the sound of the automatic doors at the entrance sliding open. I looked up, ready to greet the guests. And then, my breath caught in my throat. I never expected to see this. The woman standing there as a client with her fiancé was someone I had once loved with all my heart. Her name was Emily. She smiled radiantly as she spoke with the planner, looking completely at ease. Her beauty was captivating, so striking that I couldn't look away. She had always felt out of reach, like a flower blooming on a distant peak. Just seeing her made my heart race. She hadn't changed much at all since we were together. Emily. Before I realized it, I had spoken her name. Hearing my voice, Emily turned sharply toward me. Her expression stiffened in an instant. Michael. There was hesitation and uncertainty in her voice. But almost immediately, she composed herself, putting on a polite, distant smile. It's been a while. How have you been? Well, somehow managing. You? They say you never know when or where you'll run into someone from your past, but I never imagined it would happen here, at my own workplace. A wedding venue, of all places. The sheer absurdity of it made my chest tighten. Then, the man standing beside Emily turned his gaze to me. Sensing the strange tension in the air, he tilted his head slightly, as if trying to piece things together. Emily, do you know him? His voice was calm and deep, carrying an air of refinement. His manner of speaking was polished, and he wore a gentle, composed smile. Emily lowered her gaze slightly before answering. Yes. We went to the same university. That's all. That's all, huh? A dull ache spread in my chest. I'm Michael. I work here as a staff member at this venue. I forced myself to remain composed and bowed slightly. The man returned the gesture with a courteous nod and an easygoing smile. Hi, Michael. I'm Christopher. Emily's fiancé. With those words, he handed me his business card. Hi, Christopher. Nice to meet you. I never expected to be introduced to my ex-girlfriend's fiancé like this. My stomach twisted painfully. Christopher, Emily, thank you for waiting. I'll take you to the meeting room now. The wedding planner arrived and led them away. As I watched them walk off, Emily suddenly turned back toward me. Our eyes met, but she quickly looked away. I stood there, watching as the two of them disappeared into the meeting room, my heart weighed down by old memories. That's all we were. I murmured the words, but they changed nothing. Once, we had truly loved each other. The time we spent together at university now felt like a lifetime ago. As I stood frozen in place, other staff members bustled past, busy with their own tasks. I exhaled deeply, forcing myself back to reality. Work, focus on work, I muttered, trying to shake off the heavy thoughts. Cleaning the restrooms was a routine part of my job, something I had done countless times. I crouched down, scrubbing the toilet meticulously, trying to distract myself from the turmoil inside. The sharp scent of cleaning detergent stung my nose, but at least it helped me focus on something other than my thoughts. The floor is finally wiped with a dry cloth. Once this process is complete, the toilet cleaning is done. I straightened up, pushed open the door, and stepped out, then I locked eyes with a woman walking down the hallway. It was Emily. Ah. I let out an awkward sound, caught off guard. I never expected to run into her twice in one day. She looked just as surprised but quickly regained her composure, tilting her chin slightly and letting her gaze turn cold. What are you doing here? Cleaning toilets? Her sharp tone sent a jolt through my chest. I struggled to find the right words, forcing myself to say something. Emily, I'm glad you're happy. Congratulations on your engagement. That was all I could manage. She let out a dry, mocking laugh, looking down at me with an icy expression. I never imagined you'd end up doing grunt work in some venue. How pathetic. I'm really glad I dumped a loser like you. Looks like I was right all along. Each word was like a dagger to my heart. The scorn in her voice cut through me, leaving me raw. Had she always been this cruel? The man I'm marrying, Christopher, is the son of a major corporation's CEO. He's incredibly talented and has a bright future ahead of him, someone leagues above you. I inhaled sharply, trying to steady myself. But the ache in my chest only deepened, leaving me speechless. Well then, excuse me. I still have a meeting to attend. I never thought I'd run into you here. Just don't get in the way. With that, she turned on her heel, letting out a small scoff as she walked past me. I couldn't do anything. As her presence faded into the distance, I felt pathetic for not being able to say anything back. Even after Emily was gone, I stood there for a while, unable to move. Then suddenly, Michael? Is that you? A familiar voice echoed through the corridor. I spun around, startled, and there he was. It was Harrison, an old friend from my music school days. Harrison. What are you doing here? I should be the one asking that. What are you doing here? His gaze dropped to the rag still clutched in my hand, and his eyes widened slightly. I let out an internal sigh. There was no point in making excuses, I had to tell him the truth. I work here. Cleaning, reception, whatever needs to be done. The moment I said it, Harrison's eyes grew even wider. You, The guy who was once called a genius pianist? No way. I knew he didn't mean anything by it, but his words struck deep. I forced a dry smile. Yeah, that's right. Just a part-time worker now, no, more like a janitor. Harrison fell silent for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then, after a brief hesitation, he spoke. Listen, Emily asked me to play the piano at her wedding. My breath hitched. She said she trusted me the most since we were classmates, so I couldn't say no. Harrison's expression clearly showed his hesitation toward me. As for me, I felt bad about it, but there was nothing I could do. Harrison looked me up and down once again. Then, he stepped closer to me and lowered his voice slightly. Still, I never thought I'd find you working here, Michael. You were incredible back in music school. You competed in international competitions. And you even said you were going to marry Emily. You seemed so serious about it. What happened? At Harrison's words, memories came flooding back all at once. I had loved the piano since I was a child, earning recognition in domestic competitions. People used to call me a piano prodigy in the making. Especially in high school, I poured all my part-time earnings into performances and music-related activities. That passion never wavered, even when I entered music school. If anything, my ambition burned even brighter. I was determined to make it onto the world stage. That was when I met Emily, a fellow student at music school. We naturally gravitated toward each other. Emily majored in piano as well, but she seemed more interested in music education and production. Rather than aiming to be a top performer, she was the type who wanted to study music from a broader perspective. She was bright and sociable. She had a calmness that helped her blend effortlessly with those around her, something I lacked. At first, she was just a classmate who happened to use the piano next to mine in practice rooms. But as we exchanged thoughts after lessons, stayed late to discuss ensemble ideas, and spent more and more time together, our bond deepened. Michael, try relaxing your fingers a bit more. Your tone is beautiful, but sometimes you tense up too much. Really? Thanks. You always have a way of noticing the best things in people. Before I knew it, she had become irreplaceable to me. And eventually, we promised to get married. But Emily's family was wealthy, very wealthy. Her father, Nathan, was the CEO of a multinational corporation. Emily had told me about it before. At the time, I thought, family background doesn't matter. Talent is everything. But reality wasn't that simple. One day, I visited Emily's home to formally introduce myself. Her father, Nathan, sat on an opulent leather sofa, scrutinizing me with sharp, assessing eyes. My daughter is still young. It's far too early for her to be thinking about marriage. An ordinary music student like you has no ability to provide for her. Your future is too uncertain. This conversation is premature. Dad. Michael isn't just any music student. Emily stepped forward, her voice defiant. He made it through the preliminary round of the Chopin competition as the youngest competitor in history. He even won a special prize at the Vienna International. His professors call him a rising star. If you just listened to him play once, you'd understand. His delicate tone, his unique expressiveness. I've never encountered talent like his. He'll be fine. I know he will. I've watched him closer than anyone. Her voice trembled with passion. Her hands, clenched into fists, were shaking slightly. But Nathan remained unmoved. Instead, he laid out a condition. If you truly want to marry my daughter, win the upcoming international piano competition. That competition is one of the most prestigious for young pianists worldwide. Only the most promising talents even place in it. If you win, I will have no choice but to acknowledge that you're more than just an ordinary student. That particular competition was a prestigious European event, an elite proving ground for young pianists. Japanese contestants rarely even made it to the final round, let alone won. Winners often secured contracts with major record labels, launching them into professional careers. It was a stage I had admired as well. Half expecting it to be an impossible demand, I still accepted the challenge. "Don't let my father's words pressure you," Emily reassured me. But instead of discouraging me, his condition fueled my determination. Proving myself through music to be with Emily, I was willing to give it everything I had. For the next few months, I was completely absorbed in my music school classes and intense practice for the competition. I spent countless hours playing, not only in the campus piano rooms but also on my digital piano at home, barely taking time to sleep. My professor, Mr. Nelson, often cautioned me, "Music isn't just about perseverance, Michael. You need to nurture your artistry, too." But I couldn't afford to slow down. And then, the fateful day arrived. During the finals of the International Piano Competition, I played the best performance of my life. My hands trembled with nerves at first, but in my mind, I kept replaying Emily's last words before I stepped onto the stage. "You'll be fine. I believe in you." That gave me the push I needed. I won the competition. It was an unbelievable achievement. Both the international audience and the judges praised my piano performance. It felt like a dream. For a while, I was too overwhelmed to process it, but by the time I stepped off the stage, I realized tears were streaming down my face. Surrounded by Mr. Nelson, my senior students, and my friends who had supported me like managers, I was showered with applause. At that moment, I was certain that a bright future with Emily awaited me. The moment I returned to Japan after the competition, I set my next plan into motion. I went to buy an engagement ring. Most of the prize money was already allocated to travel expenses, living costs, and future opportunities, but I managed to set aside just enough. It was a small diamond ring, but its brilliance was undeniable. As I held it in my hands at the store, I imagined Emily's smile, and my chest tightened with emotion. Now, I can finally make Emily happy. I truly believed that. I called Emily to meet me at a cafe near my home. However, when Emily arrived, her expression was colder than ever. Her usual warmth was gone, her expression was cold, almost unrecognizable. I thought it was just my imagination. She must be nervous too. Trying to push away the unease, I reached into my pocket and pulled out the small box with trembling hands. "Emily, will you marry me?" My heart was racing. But Emily didn't meet my eyes. Silence fell between us. After what felt like an eternity, she finally looked at me. Her eyes held a coldness I had never seen before. "Wait. You were serious?" She let out a quiet laugh, tilting her head slightly. My breath caught. "Did you really think that just because you won a competition, we'd get married? Wow. You really misunderstood. Come on, Michael. Our relationship was just a passing whim. A little romance with the top pianist in school, it was fun while it lasted. But let's be real. We live in different worlds. It's time to stop dreaming." Her words cut through me like a blade of ice. I wanted to believe this was a cruel joke. But the faint smirk on her lips told me otherwise. Why? We were supposed to be together. Even your father said he'd accept me if I won. I tried desperately to piece together the words, but Emily simply shook her head. "I have to go now. Goodbye." With that, she turned up the collar of her coat and disappeared into the rain-washed streets. The ring I had planned to give her remained in my hand, its cold gleam reflecting the light. I stood there, frozen. The cafe's background music played on, eerily vivid in my ears. From that day on, every time I sat in front of a piano, Emily's expression from that moment flashed through my mind. The competition that should have been my greatest triumph became the very thing that haunted me. I, who had once loved the piano more than anything, now found it unbearable to face. And before I knew it, I had distanced myself from everything: the piano, the music school, and my future. That ring still sits at the back of my shelf. Every time I see it, that memory comes rushing back, suffocating me. And yet, I can't bring myself to throw it away. While I stood there lost in past, Harrison watched me with quiet understanding. "You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to. But it's just such a waste. Someone like you, working here like this." At Harrison's words, I let out a breath and dropped my gaze to the floor. A small, bitter laugh escaped me. Harrison remained silent for a while, as if carefully choosing his words. When I finally lifted my gaze, he was staring at me intently. "Michael, are you really never going to play the piano again? It's such a waste. You have no idea how much your playing inspired me back then." Something flickered inside my chest. Harrison had been there. He had seen how deeply I had once devoted myself to the piano. We had pushed each other, offering advice and striving to improve together. I always thought it was only natural that you'd be standing on a world-class stage one day. We all did. That's why seeing you like this, just wasting away in some wedding venue, I can't help but wonder why, Michael. Why did it come to this? There was frustration in Harrison's voice, mixed with something close to pity. I lowered my gaze. "It's over. I can't do it anymore. Every time I touch the piano, I see Emily's face. And then my fingers freeze. Maybe if I worked at it, I could get past it. But I don't even want to try anymore." A heavy weight settled deep in my chest. The old me, the one who lived and breathed music, would have fought against this feeling with everything he had. But now, all I could do was bite my lip bitterly. Harrison seemed at a loss for words. Finally, he sighed and placed a hand on my shoulder. "I get it. I pushed too much, sorry. But if you ever want to play again, call me. I'll always be your fan." I forced a small, dry smile. "Thanks." With that, we went our separate ways, carrying a weight neither of us knew how to shake off. On my way to my next cleaning duty, I glanced at the grand piano sitting in the venue. I exhaled shortly, closed my eyes for a moment, then gripped my cleaning tools tighter. The murky emotions sitting at the bottom of my heart weren't going to disappear anytime soon. A few days passed after that. After finishing my shift, I exited through the back entrance. The sun had already set, and the dim glow of the streetlights cast long shadows over the quiet road. As I walked down the street, I suddenly stopped in my tracks. My heart pounded at the sight of a sleek luxury car parked under the streetlight. Christopher stepped out from the driver's seat. There was no mistaking him, Emily's fiancé. He walked over to the passenger side and opened the door. A woman stepped out. She was wearing a striking red dress, her presence loud and attention-grabbing. But she wasn't Emily. "Who is she?" Christopher leaned in close, whispering something into the woman's ear as his hand rested intimately on her waist. To an outsider unaware of the situation, the two of them would almost look like a couple. That's how close they seemed. At the very least, that behavior didn't seem like something between just friends. Even as a bad feeling crept over me, I hesitated about whether to call out to him. Ignoring it here wouldn't matter, since it had nothing to do with me. But could I really just walk away? Would she be okay marrying someone like him? Such thoughts kept swirling in my mind. Doubt swirled in my mind, and before I could stop myself, I took a step forward. "Excuse me, Christopher." I kept my tone as polite as possible. He turned, startled. The moment his eyes landed on me, his expression darkened. The pleasant, refined smile he had worn at the wedding venue was gone, replaced by unmistakable irritation. "Oh, it's you. The janitor from the venue. What do you want?" The sheer disdain in his voice caught me off guard. At the ceremonial hall, He spoke politely and acted with grace. Where did that go? What happened to that gentlemanly demeanor? Christopher stroked the hair of the flashy woman clinging to his arm while glaring down at me. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my composure. This woman, who is she? When I fearfully asked this, Christopher's eyebrows twitched. Huh? Oh, her? Just a friend. A work acquaintance. What? Just a friend? That's awful. You told me you loved me. The flashy woman pouted her bright red lips and pressed even closer to Christopher. Yeah, sorry, babe. Had to say something like that, or else this low-level venue worker might start getting the wrong idea. Christopher sneered at me, his eyes full of condescension. Who do you think you are, sticking your nose into my private life? Oh wait, don't tell me you still have feelings for Emily? That's hilarious. Completely pointless, though. Learn your place. But I doubt you'll get it. Bottom feeders like you should just stick to scrubbing floors and keep their mouths shut. Heat rose to my temples. His arrogance made my blood boil. But now wasn't the time to lose my temper. I clenched my teeth and swallowed my anger. Does Emily know about this? Christopher smirked and shrugged exaggeratedly. Why would that matter? She probably has male friends of her own. This is a political marriage. We both know what we're in for. So don't act like it's your business, janitor. A political marriage. The weight of those words made me freeze for a moment. Christopher chuckled, as if savoring my reaction. Her family and mine have business ties. Strengthening those ties through marriage is just a logical step. Our parents are on board because it benefits both companies. Emily's nothing more than a pawn, a bridge between our businesses, nothing else. Christopher. My voice dropped instinctively. But Christopher simply scoffed. She knows it, too. She walks around acting all high and mighty, but in the end, she's just a spoiled daddy's girl living off his money. She makes a decent trophy wife, though. Pretty face, good enough status. Perfect for marriage on paper. And hey, nothing says I can't have a little fun on the side. My vision blurred with rage. I stepped forward and grabbed him by the collar. For a brief moment, surprise flickered in his eyes. Then he smirked. Oh? Did I hit a nerve? What, is the janitor playing knight in shining armor now? That's rich. Before I knew it, my fist had already connected with his face. A dull thud echoed in the quiet night as Christopher hit the pavement. The surroundings fell completely silent. The woman in the red dress shrieked and stumbled back in shock. Pain throbbed through my knuckles as I realized what I had done. Christopher sat up, clutching his cheek, blood trickling from the corner of his lip. Holding his cheek, he stood up and glared with a furious, almost demonic expression. Michael! You really did it. I'm reporting this to the venue. His rage-filled voice shattered the stillness of the midnight air. I bit my lip in silence, unable to say a word. I didn't regret hitting him. But I knew nothing good would come from it. The next day, I was summoned to the venue's office. Inside the small room, the owner, Tyler, sat with his arms crossed, his expression grim. Beside him was a stern-looking HR representative. As I took my seat, Tyler crossed his arms over his chest and let out a sigh. I heard about it. You punched Christopher, didn't you? He's one of our most important clients. What were you thinking? I struggled to find the right words in response to Tyler's question. My mind was still a mess from last night. Tyler exchanged glances with the HR manager. Christopher filed a formal complaint. He said he doesn't feel safe holding his wedding here anymore. He's considering switching venues. This is a serious issue for us. I lowered my head. I'm sorry. I really am. But Tyler's expression remained cold. This is a wedding venue. We can't employ someone who attacks clients. I have no choice but to let you go." A merciless verdict was delivered. Frustration swirled in my mind. That said, it was only natural for a large wedding venue to prioritize its customers. That was the day I lost my job. "Michael, what's wrong? Did something happen?" As I was about to leave, my co-workers, unaware of the situation, called out to me with concern. Feeling both guilty and frustrated, I simply shook my head and walked away. For the next few days, I shut myself away in my cheap apartment, drowning in a dark mood, when suddenly, the doorbell rang. I had no idea who it could be. Maybe the landlord, or perhaps a newspaper salesperson. With a half-hearted attitude, I opened the door. "Emily?" Standing there, without a doubt, was Emily. She looked a little more worn out than usual. But in her eyes, there was a strong, unwavering light. And the first thing she did was yell at me. "Are you stupid? Why did you do that?" Her sharp tone caught me off guard. It seemed she had heard about me punching Christopher. As I stood there speechless, holding the door open, Emily kicked off her shoes and barged in, scanning the room with a glare. "You've been holed up in here ever since you got fired? Seriously, what is wrong with you?" It was rare to see Emily this openly emotional. I could only stare at her, dumbfounded. She looked down with a pained expression, biting her lip, then turned her glare back to me. "Violence is unacceptable. You know that Guy was about to become an important client for the wedding venue. You knew that, didn't you?" I thought about explaining. But I couldn't bring myself to mention that I had seen Christopher with another woman. If I told her, I had no idea how much it would hurt her. "I'm sorry. But that guy, he's not a good person. If you marry him, you'll never be happy." At my words, Emily shook her head furiously. "What? That's none of your business. I'm already set to marry Christopher." Her firm tone made me snap back. "Are you sure? Do you really love him? From the bottom of your heart?" Emily stiffened for a moment but then raised her voice even louder. "Of course I do. How could I not love the person I'm going to marry? We're going to be husband and wife." She was obviously forcing herself. Seeing her like that made my chest tighten, and before I could stop myself, the words came out. "Then, do you know he's been seeing other women? I saw him with someone else the other day. And trust me, they weren't just friends. And on top of that," he said, I know. I've always known he sees other women besides me. That's just the kind of person he is." She cut me off, lowering her gaze. I was speechless. She continued. "I've known from the beginning that he's that kind of man. It doesn't matter. No matter how much he plays around, I'm the one he's marrying. I'll be his wife. That's what's best for my family's business." I couldn't find any words. Was she hiding her true feelings? Or had she really accepted it? I could tell she was trying to convince herself, but watching her do that was painful. "But, living like that, are you truly happy?" When I finally forced out the question, Emily looked off into the distance. "It doesn't matter. This is my life. You should focus on yours. You should start playing the piano again, like you used to. Stop worrying about me." She took a breath, then turned to me with slightly teary eyes. "I'm leaving. Sorry for barging in and making a scene. I just couldn't believe you actually hit him." She turned on her heel and reached for the door. "Emily." She didn't turn back when I called her name, she just walked out of the room. The sound of the door closing felt unbearably heavy, as if it echoed inside my chest. In the end, nothing was resolved, neither Christopher's cheating, nor how Emily truly felt about it. I was simply left alone in my messy apartment. After Emily left, I tried looking for temporary jobs, but things didn't go well. It seemed my work history didn't appeal much to regular companies, and I kept getting rejected in interviews. How did things end up like this? With barely enough money to afford a drink, I stared blankly at the ceiling, laughing bitterly at myself. Then, one day, amidst those dark days, my phone vibrated with an incoming call. When I looked at the screen, I saw Tyler's name from the wedding venue. Surprised, I pressed the answer button. "Hello, this is Michael." The voice on the other end sounded somewhat apologetic. Caught off guard by the unexpected call, I was asked to come to the venue's office. The one who had fired me was none other than Tyler himself. What was the point of this now? Still confused, I made my way to the reception room, where Tyler sat at a desk, looking slightly uncomfortable. Why? I was fired for punching Christopher, wasn't I? As I sat down and asked, Tyler moved a stack of papers to the side, letting out a heavy sigh before choosing his words carefully. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, making faint dust particles visible in the air. Yeah. It was a difficult decision for me too. At that time, I had no choice but to prioritize Christopher's complaint as an important client. But now there's a reason why I want you to come back. A reason? I furrowed my brows, and Tyler bit his lip as if struggling to say something. Then, he straightened up and continued. Actually, Emily spoke up for you. She defended you passionately, saying that Christopher's behavior was the real issue. So we reevaluated the situation, and honestly, we realized we had been too quick to blame you. On top of that, the staff and even our customers had nothing but high praise for your work. Firing you might have been a huge mistake. With that, he bowed his head apologetically. The fact that Emily went that far for me filled me with both surprise and confusion. My chest felt uneasy, as if something was stirring deep inside. If you're willing, we'd like you to come back. We're even considering making you a full-time employee. Please, Michael, come back. The only sound in the room was the faint rustling of wind through the blinds. The silence pressed down on me like a weight, making it hard to breathe. Let me think about it. When I finally responded, Tyler looked relieved and nodded before bowing once more. Suppressing a sigh that threatened to escape, I stood up from my chair. The unexpected turn of events left my mind unsettled. But more than anything, one question kept repeating in my head: is this really where I belong? I spent several days agonizing over it before finally reaching a decision. If I want to figure out my path from here, I need to go back, at least once. The me who abandoned the piano. The me who gave up on her. I didn't want to leave things as they were. That tiny ember of passion inside me felt like it was pushing me forward, stronger than I expected. I called Tyler back. And then, the day of Emily's wedding arrived. The venue was adorned with white flowers, and guests had begun to trickle in. The reception staff greeted them with warm smiles, while elegantly dressed attendees moved through the lobby. Watching the scene unfold, I let out a slow, deep breath. Hey, Michael. Looking forward to working with you today. Tyler approached with a nod. I forced a faint smile and bowed my head. Thank you. I'll do my best. Deep down, I still had doubts. But for now, all I could do was fulfill my role as a staff member. As I braced myself for the day, a burst of lively laughter caught my attention. I turned toward the sound just as the door to the bridal waiting room opened and Emily stepped out, dressed in a pure white wedding gown. For a moment, I thought my heart had stopped. I had known she would look stunning, but the reality was breathtaking. Our eyes met as she glanced in my direction. Her eyes widened slightly in surprise before she quickly looked away. I could feel my heartbeat pounding in my chest, my breath uneven. Taking a deep breath, I steadied myself and stepped closer to her. Emily. Michael. The moment our eyes locked again, my chest tightened. She was beautiful, undeniably so, but at the same time, seeing her like this only made the harsh reality hit harder. Doing my best to keep a composed, professional expression, I spoke. Thank you for getting me my job back. I heard you put in a lot of effort. Emily averted her gaze slightly, lowering her voice. No, I just couldn't stand leaving things as they were. But, it's good, right? You got your place back. A strange, indescribable silence hung between us. I wanted to say something in return, but no words came. Breaking the heavy pause, I finally asked, "Are you really okay with going through with this wedding?" Her eyes wavered, just for a second. But that flicker of hesitation was quickly buried beneath a cold, resolute expression. It's too late now. This is my decision. Besides, the ceremony is about to start. Her words stung, and I bit my lip hard. A frustrating, suffocating feeling welled up in my chest, but I had no idea what to say. Emily, even now, I still. Just as I was about to say those words, the sharp sound of heavy footsteps cut through the air, and someone else barged in. What are you slacking off for? You better not be getting any stupid ideas again. Get back to your job, errand boy. I turned, and there was Christopher. Dressed in a tuxedo, he looked every bit the groom, but his arrogant demeanor remained unchanged. You don't have to talk like that. Emily protested, clearly flustered, but Christopher only raised his voice further. Shut up. Do you have any idea how much our reputation is on the line because you keep hanging around this guy? If word gets out that you used to date some lowly janitor, it'll be embarrassing as hell. His words sparked a flicker of anger deep inside me. But I can't make the same mistake of throwing a punch again. Pressing my lips together tightly, I look at Emily. She had lowered her head, her small frame trembling. Christopher continued. Once we're married, you'll be part of my family. You should start distancing yourself from people like him before rumors spread. Stop it, don't say things like that today. Emily glanced up at him, her expression pained. Just then, a staff member called out to me. Michael, we need you over here. I gave a slight bow to both of them before quickly walking away. But the weight in my chest remained. The ceremony, held in a grand chapel, proceeded without issue. Emily walked down the aisle, escorted by her father, and Christopher played his part as the groom, at least in appearance. I wasn't there myself, but when my fellow venue staff told me she looked absolutely stunning, I was overcome with mixed emotions. After the ceremony, the event moved on to the reception, with a grand toast, extravagant dishes, and lively performances unfolding one after another. As part of the backstage staff, I was busy handing champagne to the bride and groom, guiding guests, and rushing around. Meanwhile, the time for Harrison's performance was steadily approaching. On the stage stood a pure white grand piano. Bathed in the stage lights, its glossy surface shimmered with an almost divine radiance. I wanted to listen to Harrison's performance from the audience, but with all the work I had, I'd probably only be able to catch glimpses from the sidelines. Then, just before the performance was about to begin, a frantic voice crackled through the staff's intercom. Harrison just collapsed with stomach pain. He's in the dressing room and can't move. For a moment, I couldn't believe what I had just heard. The pianist going down right before the performance was the worst possible situation. Without a second thought, I took off running. When I burst into the dressing room, Harrison was slumped on the couch, his face pale. A couple of staff members and the medical team were by his side. Harrison, are you okay? At my voice, he lifted his head slightly, his expression strained. Sorry. Michael. My stomach hurts so bad, I can't even stand. At this rate, forget playing, he couldn't even walk. What do we do? If we don't have a pianist, the whole program falls apart. Can we get another pianist? No way, there's no time. The staff exchanged anxious glances. Someone had to play the piano. Without it, this wedding's climax would be completely ruined. Then, Harrison looked at me. Even though his face was pale, his eyes still held a strong light. And in that instant, something inside me snapped into place. I'll do it. The room fell silent. Ha! You? But, just as one of the staff members muttered in disbelief, Tyler rushed into the room, looking flustered. What's going on? The performance is about to start. I turned to him with unwavering resolve. Tyler, I'll play the piano. He widened his eyes in surprise. Then, after a long breath, he nodded deeply. I've noticed you watching that piano while working. You studied piano, didn't you? Do it. I'll take responsibility. We'll back you up all the way. His words made my chest tighten. Thank you. I won't let you down. I turned back to Harrison, kneeling beside him. Sorry, but leave this to me. Through his pain, Harrison managed a small nod, looking apologetic. Yeah. If it's you, I know you'll. His words trailed off, but I nodded in return. There was no turning back now. With my heart set, I sprinted toward the banquet hall, where the grand piano awaited. Peeking from the side of the stage, I saw the MC preparing to announce the cancellation of the performance due to the pianist's condition. The newlyweds and guests were already exchanging uneasy glances. I took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage. A wave of murmurs rippled through the room as all eyes turned toward me. At the head table, Emily stared at me, her eyes wide in shock. Beside her, Christopher's expression twisted into an unmistakable look of, "Why is he up there?" I slowly lowered myself onto the piano bench. As I placed my hands over the piano keys, I felt a faint tremor in my fingers. A wave of nervous tension, almost like fear, ran through me. I was about to play in front of a live audience after such a long hiatus. But there was no turning back now. I placed my fingers on the piano keys. The moment the first chord resonated through the hall, time seemed to slow within me. It felt as though my entire being was melting into the music. Ah! I really do love playing the piano. As soon as that realization hit me, the fear vanished. The piece I chose was a classical composition I had played countless times in my student days. A piece full of both grandeur and emotion, perfect for a wedding. My left hand set the rhythm gently, while my right hand wove delicate melodies. With every note, a deep silence spread throughout the room. It felt as though the world existed only within the sound of the piano. The piano, I had been away from it for so long. Yet, my fingertips effortlessly transformed my emotions into sound. Any rust I had didn't matter in the face of my feelings. The fire buried deep inside me roared back to life with each touch of the keys. As the piece reached its climax, the melody swelled with drama, cascading into powerful passages before closing on a brilliant final chord. For a brief moment after I finished, the hall was completely still. Then, an explosion of applause and cheers erupted. Guests rose to their feet, and dazzling spotlights illuminated me. Catching my breath, I lowered my head slightly in gratitude. I turned my gaze toward the newlyweds. Emily sat there, one hand over her chest, tears brimming in her eyes. The applause continued as I stood up and stepped toward the microphone. And then, I gathered my resolve and gripped the microphone. I'm sure this came as a surprise. Our pianist, Harrison, fell ill, so I stepped in at the last minute. My performance may not have been perfect, but I played with all my heart as a celebration for the couple. I hope you can forgive me. Just then, Emily stood up from her seat. She wiped her tears, locking eyes with me. She didn't say a word, but her gaze burned with an unspoken intensity. If I let this moment slip away, I might never get another chance. I steadied my trembling breath and continued. Emily, I still love you. Even after losing everything, I was able to play today because of you. You are the biggest inspiration behind my music. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Guests looked bewildered, staff members froze, and I caught glimpses of people holding their breath. Yet Emily didn't seem shocked. Tears still ran down her face, but her eyes never wavered from mine. Michael, do you even realize what you're doing? This is our wedding. Are you out of your damn mind? Christopher shot up from his chair, his face flushed red with rage. Say something. Tell him off. Overwhelmed by Christopher's fury, Emily was unable to respond and lowered her gaze. Her small shoulders trembled. You hear me? Answer me, damn it. Christopher, completely losing his temper, roughly grabbed her arm and yanked her toward him. Emily lost her balance and staggered. The hem of her pure white wedding dress swayed as her feet faltered, and she collapsed to her knees, tipping sideways. Ah! A small, pained gasp escaped her lips. Cries of shock and murmurs filled the hall. Emily's cheeks flushed with humiliation and distress, and her body was trembling. A murmur of shock and startled screams rose from the crowd. My vision turned red once again. But just as I was about to rush toward Christopher, Nathan stood up firmly and declared in a deep, commanding voice, Emily, do as you wish. The entire venue fell into silence at those words. Huh? What do you mean? Christopher looked at Nathan in a panic. Nathan, his sharp gaze piercing through Christopher, continued in a low voice. It's exactly what it sounds like. Did you really think I'd allow my daughter to marry a man who would lay a hand on her? He glared at Christopher. Christopher flinched for a moment but quickly forced a smile onto his face. It was just a slip, you know? I couldn't hold back when I thought that bastard was going to steal my bride. No, it wasn't a slip. I know everything. I know how you've been treating Emily like a mere tool while fooling around with other women behind her back. Christopher's face stiffened. But almost immediately, his face flushed red as he tried to argue back. What are you even talking about? Besides, this marriage is a business deal. Are you really okay with breaking off the engagement at the last minute and ruining the partnership between our companies? I don't care what happens to the deal. I will not give my daughter to someone who doesn't truly care for her, Nathan declared firmly. Then, he let out a deep sigh and turned to face me. For years, I prioritized the company and appearances, trampling over Emily's feelings. I forced her into a political marriage, binding her to status and tradition. I even tore her away from you. But listening to your music, I finally understood. Your music was overflowing with a pure love for Emily, something I had denied all this time. I won't ruin my daughter's life with my selfishness anymore. I am truly sorry. There was a softness in Nathan's voice that hadn't been there before. Christopher stood frozen, dumbfounded. Meanwhile, Emily's eyes glistened with tears as she listened to her father's words. Dad, are you really okay with this? Nathan met his daughter's gaze and gave a solemn nod. Yes. I should have realized this much sooner. I'm sorry. As soon as those words left his mouth, Emily's tears spilled over. She slowly stepped forward. She stopped right in front of me. Michael, I choose you. No matter how many years passed, it was always you. I'm sorry for taking the long way around. At that moment, I was overwhelmed by a wave of emotion. My whole body trembled. The white dress Emily wore accentuated the soft flush on her cheeks. Don't mess with me. Christopher, consumed by rage, raised his fist, but the security staff swiftly restrained him. Let go of me. Do you know who I am? He struggled to maintain his dignity, but his words sounded more like the tantrum of a spoiled child. Even as security dragged him away, he continued shouting, You'll regret this, and you don't know who you're dealing with. But his threats rang hollow. Christopher was ejected from the venue, completely rejected by the atmosphere of the room. As he disappeared, the guests murmured amongst themselves, though many seemed relieved to see him go. At the center of it all, Emily and I stood together, left behind in the aftermath. I took a deep breath and stepped up to the microphone. Everyone, I sincerely apologize for the disruption to the reception. But instead of an uncomfortable silence, the guests seemed captivated by the dramatic turn of events. A small round of applause started, gradually spreading until the entire hall erupted into cheers and applause. I squeezed Emily's hand and whispered to her. I had given up, but somehow, we found our way back to each other. Thank you, Emily. I'm the one who should be thanking you, and I'm sorry. The truth is, I've always loved you. Emily responded in a trembling voice. The white grand piano behind us shimmered softly, as if blessing our reunion. The day after the wedding, rumors about Christopher's affairs exploded across social media. It all started when a guest from the reception posted a video of Christopher's outburst, along with testimonies about the woman he had brought with him. Apparently, their conversation had been loud enough for others to hear, exposing even more of his secrets. People pounced on the scandal of a rich heir caught red-handed. When Emily told me about it, I was honestly shocked. Christopher's mistresses and casual flings also came forward, adding fuel to the fire. The internet was flooded with outrage, branding him a disgusting man and accusing him of treating women as disposable objects. The flames spread fast, and Christopher's reputation plummeted in an instant. That being said, completely severing business ties wasn't a realistic option. Both Emily's and Christopher's families were heads of major corporations. The scale of their transactions was enormous. The marriage fell apart, but the business must continue. It benefits both parties. With that kind of pragmatic reasoning, it seemed that their business relationship continued, albeit in a more subdued form. From Emily's family's perspective, it was a logical corporate decision not to let a single man's disgrace jeopardize an entire business operation. As for Christopher himself, he all but disappeared from public view after the social media backlash. The once arrogant and domineering man was now bearing the full weight of public scorn. To be honest, I didn't feel the slightest sympathy for him. After all, he had tried to make the woman I love miserable. Ironically, that same social media platform that tore him down soon brought unexpected attention to me. Apparently, one of the guests had filmed my impromptu piano performance at the reception along with my confession to Emily. The video went viral almost instantly, with captions like "The Wedding's Unexpected Piano Prodigy" and "A Love Confession Straight Out of a Drama." At first, I was overwhelmed by embarrassment and confusion. But before I knew it, music industry professionals started reaching out. Some wanted to meet me, others invited me for interviews. What followed was beyond anything I had imagined. A guest performance at a small concert, magazine interviews, and even a direct offer from a music producer. Step by step, these opportunities pulled me back into the spotlight as a pianist. I couldn't help but wonder, was I just being used as a marketing gimmick or a novelty act? But the moment I sat at the piano and played, I could feel the audience listening, drawn in by the music itself. That feeling I had at the wedding, it was still in my fingertips. The passion for the piano that I had buried for so long was surging back, stronger than ever. This time, I wasn't charging forward recklessly like I had in my student days. I wanted to stand firm and truly establish myself as a pianist. By the time I made that decision, I had already become the talk of the town, shaking up the music world in unexpected ways. One day, after wrapping up a meeting for an upcoming concert at a hall in Tokyo, I was about to step out into the lobby when I ran into someone completely unexpected. "Yo, Michael." I turned at the familiar voice and saw Harrison standing there. "Harrison. It's been a while. You doing okay? I heard you were down bad with stomach pains." "Oh, I'm fine." When I asked that, Harrison let out a small, dry laugh and then shrugged. "Yeah, about that. It was a lie." "Huh? What do you mean, a lie?" My voice cracked in disbelief. Harrison gave me a mischievous wink. "I couldn't stand watching you run away from the piano. I knew that if you just had the right push, you'd play. And, well, you know I've got some serious acting skills, right? That stomachache was an Oscar-worthy performance, wasn't it? You've gotta be kidding me. I was dumbfounded, but I could feel my temples growing warm. So that whole fiasco at the wedding was all part of Harrison's plan. Thanks to me, you had your big moment. And now, you're back in the spotlight as a pianist. So I'd say it's fair to call this my victory. Wouldn't you? Harrison puffed out his chest in mock pride. I let out a small chuckle and playfully nudged his shoulder. Yeah. I gotta admit, I owe you one. But man, you had me panicking back there. Well, isn't that the best way to make someone act for real? People don't go all in unless there's a little chaos involved. Besides, you and I both have always been comfortable on stage, right? Harrison grinned, and I nearly burst out laughing. Without his scheme, I might never have found my way back to the piano. It had been a long detour, but in the end, Harrison had given me the push I needed. Thanks, Harrison. When I said it sincerely, Harrison blinked in surprise before waving it off, looking a little embarrassed. Come on, it's nothing. Just watching you shine on stage is enough for me. But hey, don't forget to drop by one of my performances sometime. Mr. Genius Pianist. Of course. And next time, we should play together. As we exchanged light-hearted words, a refreshing breeze swept through the hall's entrance. I never imagined that a friendship from my school days would one day give me the push I needed in this way. And then, I found myself visiting Emily's family home for the first time in a long while. It was Nathan who greeted me at the entrance. His stern expression remained unchanged, but the sharp hostility in his eyes had softened, replaced by a quiet sense of calm. I'm glad you came, Michael. Thank you for making time today. He led me to the sitting room and bowed deeply. No, I should be the one thanking you for having me. Although it was a bit awkward, I bowed my head as well. Once we sat on the sofa, a brief silence passed before Nathan spoke. The wedding reception, well, it turned into quite a spectacle. But your performance was truly remarkable. I suppose it's no surprise, given that you once won an international competition. Thank you for saving my daughter. I hadn't expected such direct gratitude. All I could manage was a simple, it was nothing. Nathan, however, fixed me with a steady gaze. There is something I need to apologize for regarding my daughter. Do you remember, back when you wanted to marry Emily? I told you to win a major competition first? Of course, I remembered. Those words had driven me to push myself to the limit, bleeding through relentless practice until I finally secured victory. Yes, I remember. The truth is, I wasn't trying to test your skill. I wanted to use you. If my company's son-in-law was a renowned international competition winner, it would boost our corporate image and aid our global expansion. That was my real motive. Looking back, I realize how disgraceful that was. I remained silent, listening. Nathan's expression turned bitter as he continued. Emily found out. She wanted to protect you. Rather than let you become just another pawn in my business strategies, she chose to push you away. She hid her true feelings and broke up with you. At the time, I didn't realize it either, but when I finally did, I knew I had made a terrible mistake. My chest tightened. Everything suddenly made sense. I finally understood why Emily had been so cold back then. I see. A mix of emotions, bitterness and gratitude swirled inside me, leaving me with little else to say. Nathan nodded as if he understood exactly how I felt. That's why if my daughter has chosen you, I won't stand in the way again. In fact, I would be honored if you would take care of her. Michael, please. Take care of Emily. I looked down at the hand he extended toward me. Then, without hesitation, I reached out and shook it. As I stepped out of the sitting room, I saw Emily peeking from the end of the hallway. She smiled shyly and beckoned me with her hand. Come on, this way. My heart pounded as I followed her into a sunlit space overlooking the garden. This is my favorite place. Our family often sits here together for tea. Emily settled onto a sofa by the window. I hesitated before sitting down beside her. Through the glass, the garden bloomed with seasonal flowers, the faint chirping of birds filling the air. I really hurt you back then. I knew how much effort you put into the competition for me, and yet, I still pushed you away. But if I hadn't said those things, I knew you'd never give up on me. Emily lowered her gaze. I shook my head quietly. No, I was the one who didn't understand anything. I let my own pain consume me and ran away from the piano. You were hurting too. Thank you for protecting me. She gave a small, wistful smile. I didn't want my father to use you. You were meant to play your music for yourself, not for someone else's gain. I reached out and took her hand. Fingers intertwined, as if filling the long years of separation. With my other hand, I slipped into my pocket and pulled out a small box I had carried for years. I've kept this all along. I opened the box, revealing the ring I had bought on the day I won the competition. Even now, it gleamed just as brightly. Emily's eyes widened. Is that the one from back then? Her voice trembled. I savored the bittersweet nostalgia and deep affection in my heart as I gently slid the ring onto her left ring finger. I will never let you go again. This time, I want to protect you properly. I want to stay by your side, always. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes at my words. Then, with a soft smile, she leaned her head against my shoulder. The soft sunlight streaming into the sunroom gently envelopes our time together. It felt as if it were telling us that we no longer needed to take the long way around. Life is unpredictable. I once let go of my victory, lost my way, and fell into despair. But now, I had reclaimed my bond with Emily and found my way back to music. If I had kept running away, I would have never known this happiness. True happiness isn't found in using those around you and heading towards self-destruction like Christopher did, but in protecting what truly matters. I learned that lesson the hard way, taking the long road to understand it. Feeling the warmth of Emily's hand in mine, I knew it was time to take my next step forward. As a pianist and as a man. This time, I would never lie to myself again. Love and talent are never wasted. Emily and I will prove that with our own lives.